comments, Lord.
All right. Do you want to introduce us?
No, you do it, Dan. You do
What's the name of our show?
It's called Spiritual Discoveries, our very first episode.
Yeah,
Yay.
Wanted to welcome everybody. We're so excited to talk about our new show. What's it called again?
A Spiritual Discovery.
Spiritual Discoveries. And today we just want to talk a little bit, about our spiritual journey. As a lot of people know, I was a Jehovah's Witness for 40 years. And I came out of there, with a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of fear about God. And it was embedded in me. It was embedded in me for a long time. And I spent the first part of my life, 40 years, just living in guilt and shame. And, they told me everything pretty much that I did was bad. My sexual desires, just everything. They said, it really felt like I was under a magnifying glass. And the watchtower was in my bedroom. The watchtower was in my hospital. The watchtower was in our medical. The watchtower was in everything. And so I had to spend a lot of time healing and overcoming and rewriting and rethinking and reprogramming my mind. And it wasn't easy. I've been out for 22 years now, and it's taken all of 22 years to rewrite these programs that I've lived in. And it almost killed me. And so what's interesting is I started studying, lots of literature. I studied for about 22 years about anything I could get my hands on, books that Angela read, like Boundaries and, all different sorts of things. And anyway, layer by layer by layer by layer. And I just want to say that because it is layer by layer by layer by layer. I remember telling a lady, I said, I'm healed. I'd been out for about 6 months, and she just shook her head. And she said, Dan, it's like an onion, and I said, what's that mean? And she said, it's layer after layer. I don't know if you've seen an onion, but it's a million layers, that have to come off us. And I didn't realize that, but there's stuff buried in our subconscious mind that's not on the surface. And that's the stuff that's even harder to get to. It's buried, and it's actually running our lives, and we can't see it. And so that stuff would come up every now and then. Every now and then a thing would come up, some kind of shame or some kind of fear or something. And I would have to look at it and sort of put a light on it. Yeah, you know what I mean? So that I could get rid of it, so that I could become aware of it. And I remember Carolyn Mace. I don't know if you know Carolyn Mace, but she's written a lot of books. One was called Anatomy of the Soul and different things. But she made a comment one day. She said, we spend the first part of our life being hurt, the first part of our life being broken, abused. And then she said, we spend the second part of our life healing the first part of our life. And I believe that's true. And so I studied Dr. David R. Hawkins. The reason I studied David R. Hawkins, because what I didn't realize was that these things in my mind were what they called consciousness. You know what I mean? And I didn't know what a victim was. I didn't know what sadness was and grief and all these different things. I just thought, that's just me. I'm unhappy or I'm angry, because for a long time I was really angry with the Jehovah's Witnesses. I was really angry. And, I really shouldn't have been that angry, because at that part of my life, I probably needed that. I needed the association with the brothers. I needed the what would you call it? The Kingdom Hall and the camaraderie, the people, the discipline of going to a meeting every day, studying, looking in the Bible. And, that sort of thing was for a time and space, right? And then the part where I was kind of abused was some of the messages within the organization, but I was more abused when I left, because I didn't realize the abandonment that I was going to be into. That was really, really shocking, the abandonment that I suffered when I left, because it was a total cutoff. It wasn't shaming. It wasn't shaming like, I'm ashamed of you for committing adultery or something like that, and you can't be a part of the organization. It was a total cutoff. It was, Jehovah doesn't like you anymore. Jehovah's, you went back to the world. Because you left the Jehovah's Witnesses, you are now part of Babylon the Great, the world empire of false religion. and that's where the gnashing of your teeth will be and the crushing of your head. Well, I didn't expect my mother. I did not expect my mother to abandon me. I didn't. I didn't expect I didn't expect my brothers to disown me. I didn't expect this. I didn't expect really truly to walk by people in the store that I've known for 20 years and they walk by me like they never knew me.
Yeah.
And I was really hurt by that. I was like, hey, Ron, hi. And he just walked by like I was just an invisible ghost. And I thought, what is going on here? Can this really be God? And so I had to deal with, maybe I made a mistake leaving the organization. Maybe me leaving wasn't the right thing to do. Maybe we are in the end times. Maybe Jehovah's going to come any day and genocide anybody who's not a Jehovah's Witness, because our scriptural basis for that was anybody who didn't call on the name of Jehovah would be saved. So Jehovah's Witnesses claim that name. They say we're the ones who God took out a people for his namesake. There was a scripture in the Bible. They said they were the ones that mainly used that name Jehovah. Everybody else used Jesus and different things. So they were claiming that name. And so, that was a big thing when that I left, because when I left and went out into other religions, like Christianity and different things, they didn't use the name Jehovah. They used Jesus. And we were taught Jesus was the mediator. Jesus was the lesser one. Jesus was the Son of God. Jesus, just came and did his thing. He sits at the right hand of God. He's not a Trinity. So I didn't really fit in anywhere. I didn't fit into churches. I didn't want to go back to Old Testament, because the Old Testament from where I was at was filled with guilt and shame. And I'm not going to say that is true. Since then, I've learned that some of that Old Testament was really wonderful. It was the law, even was given to help people. The law was given out of love to give us boundaries and to tell us that this would hurt. If you commit adultery, you're going to get divorced. If you steal, you're going to get in trouble. There was a parameter of understanding that we could use now to make us better people. And then, Jesus, it said, furthered the law. He says, I'm going to tell you that it isn't only killing your brother, but I'm going to tell you it's wanting your brother dead is a sin. You see, he furthered it. He says, I'm going to even help you further, because, see, we can kill somebody without killing them. And that is very interesting. We can kill somebody's soul. We can reject somebody. We got to remember, we are made of water, right? And so if our intention is, I don't like you, and I think you're evil, and I think you're part of the world, and I think you're a throwaway, and I think you're trash, that intention can actually kill me. So Jesus took the law, which says do not kill or do not murder. I don't know what it says. Don't hold me to it exactly, but it's something like that. Don't kill.
I shall not kill.
So, but are we killing? Are we killing when we say, I hate you? We saw an experiment just the other day with rice, wasn't it?
Right.
They put a little label on some rice. They took two things of rice and they put them in these vials. One was, they were both the same time. They sealed them up. One of them, they put hate on it, and one of them put love. And one of the rice, they said they loved it. They grabbed the vial and they said, I love you, and you're beautiful, and you're wonderful. I love you. I love you. And then they took the other one and said, I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. And I think it was 7 or 8 days. That rice rotted.
It was 10 days.
10 days.
But you saw it progressively getting uglier and it was black. It was gross. And the other one, it looked great.
Yes.
After 10 days.
And so the thought was that, our words are powerful. It said God spoke, and the world was created. You know what I mean? And this word becomes flesh. And, so we're using the word. So here's the thing. Here we are, made in God's image and likeness, right? So there is a lot of power on our tongue, but there's also a lot of power in our eyes. If I look at you with disdain, I can hurt you. I can hurt you more by telling you you're disgusting. So all of these things, that's why I appreciate what Jesus said. He took the law and he says, I'm not just going to tell you, if you go out and kill a guy, I'm going to tell you you're just as much a murderer. If you're looking with that intent, if you're thinking with that intent, if you're covertly using your mind, which is this part of us, this consciousness that's made in God's image and likeness, we have a choice. And I'm gonna just say it like this, and this is what we're gonna talk about in our upcoming videos. But here's the thing: when we came out of the garden, right? When we came out, Adam and Eve, when we came out, it says they became like us, knowing good and evil. So we have the ability, and that's why the law was written, and that's why Jesus spoke to it. We have the ability to give life to people or death. We do. We do. I can hate you into the grave.
Yeah, death and life are in the power of the tongue.
Are in the power of the tongue, our tongue. So Jesus is saying, don't just look at the big thing, thou shalt not kill. He was saying, let's magnify it a little more. Let's really look at this thing. What is murder? And it's these things. So
I think my mom maybe wanted to say
oh,
something.
did Anita
I
want
saw
to?
the volume going up a little
Oh,
bit.
if Anita wants to say
Do
anything,
you want to say it? Okay, so
anytime. So I
wait.
think that is amazing. That I think that's amazing that we have that kind of power to do good and evil. And I just think we've got to be careful. We've got to learn. Well, I don't think at first we realize we have that power. I think we don't realize that we have that power among us to do these certain things. And so, anyway, long story short, that's what we want to talk about. See, so what we're in the process of doing, when I was in religion, was feeling dumbed down. I was feeling, like I was, dumbed down, like I was nobody. And as we pull these veils off that religion has put on our eyes, that we're just sinners and we're weak and we're no good, and all this stuff that we've been living in, the Bible says, no, we were made in God's image and likeness, and what I made was good. And so he gave us the ability to practice good or evil. And so I think at some point in our life, we choose goodness. That's the hope, that after we've lived out some of this law, some of this going on our prodigal journey, as we stop the covertness, that we stop the lying, we stop the whatever it is we're doing. You know what I mean? We decide, hey, I want to start to do good. Did you want to say something?
No.
And so that's where we're at today. We've come out of these religions. We've awoken to the fact that we are powerful. We are powerful, just like what happened with that rice. That rice, when that intention was, I hate you, that rice spoiled. It rotted immediately.
And it was cooked rice. It looked like to us.
Yeah,
it wasn't dry rice.
Yeah,
dried rice.
Yeah, it was even
cooked.
Black looking.
Yeah, but it had been cooked and then put in containers, and then those are what went black and stuff.
Yeah.
So
this is what we're dealing with. So what I'm saying is, we're connected to source. We didn't get here on our own, right? It says we move and have our being in God. That God breathed into our nostrils the breath of life, right? God knitted us together in the womb. So here we are, people that are connected with God. So there's this source, this consciousness that God's given us. It's in here, right? And at first it can be somewhat contaminated. It can be filled with shame, guilt, worry, all these different things that Dr. David R. Hawkins talked about.
yeah.
So what I liked about this, what this is Dr. Hawkins. It's Dr. Hawkins' scale of consciousness. And it talks about the places that we live in. And it's interesting that at 200, okay, they call 200 the line of integrity. But anyway, this is a consciousness scale from 0 down here, death and dying, all the way up to here, bliss and happiness and joy. So the goal is, as we begin to wake up to who we are and that we're connected with God, and we're going to start using this power that we have for good, right? Because we have that power. It says, these and greater things you'll do. So, but the thing about it is, down here, we don't want to hang out. I'll read what down here is. Down here is vindictive, evil, despising, miserable, disappointing, fear, grief, apathy, guilt, shame, blame, despair, regret, anxiety, craving. All this here will make you go weak on a kinesiology scale.
There's another way to say that
Go ahead,
too.
go ahead.
So, what Dr. David Hawkins was explaining was that scientifically proven below that 200 line of integrity or honesty or whatever, anything below that where you're in the grief, anger, resentment, all those other that you just read, you're in a magnetic negative flow of energy in your body. And so you're actually living in a negative pull of gravity even, and it's scientifically proven. So when you're living your life in a given day above that line of 200, where you're living in more of peace, more of joy, more of, those positive feelings and emotions, you're living in a positive gravity field, magnetic field, and your body is actually doing better and better and better the more you can hang out up in these upper levels. A lot of times in a given day, people go up and down kind of through it. And then hopefully, as we grow, we stabilize into more of those upper ones until we're feeling really pretty good in our body. And so it's really kind of a pretty big deal. That's why we're talking about that rice experiment, just a bit ago, because saying those negative words is like being in the lower attractor field or the magnetic negative flow in that, and you're pushing that onto somebody's body, or even onto your own self if you hate yourself. So, you want to try to get out of that as much as possible, and more and more and more. That's all of our goal, right?
Yeah,
So,
because
yeah.
that lower attractor field, which again is below 200, right? That is what they call uneasiness or dis-ease, right? So on the kinesiology scale, if we hang out in shame or victimization, our arms will actually go weak. If you're around a victim, it can make you sick. If you're around someone angry, like I used to be very, very angry, and people like, ooh, he scares me, because it's an energy that I carry with me, a vibration, whatever you want to call it. But these can be transcended and must be transcended. And so we've got to get out of here. If we want to be healthy, if we don't want dis-ease, uneasiness in our body, we got to leave victim. We got to leave fear. We got to leave all this stuff. But how do we do it? And that is what we want to talk about.
Yes, and that is what the churches don't seem to do that great of a job at doing either. They talk about what you should and shouldn't do, but it's rarely about the how and the steps too, which I think is kind of a tragedy.
Yeah, I think a lot of the churches, and I'm not going to say all of them, but a lot of them remind you of what you are not. I will go into a church, especially the Christian churches, and I'll say, do you know, Jesus said these things and greater you will do. Get out. Get out? We have been thrown out of our church, you know what I mean?
Many churches.
Many churches, because we've said, Jesus said these and greater things you do. Get out. I even had a pastor one time, I went up to him and I said, how come you guys don't try to talk about what Jesus said about the things I do? Don't marvel at what I'm doing, because these and greater you'll do. As I am in union with the Father and the Father's in union with me, that you would come into union with us. Why don't you talk about that? And this pastor looked me in the eye and he said, Dan, he says, we need to talk here. He said, listen, I don't know what you're reading. I'm going, it was Jesus who said it, right? You say you follow Jesus, right? He says, I don't know what you're reading, but he says, here, let me tell you a story. And I said, okay. He said, we put a dog on a prayer list that was dying, and we put a woman on a prayer list that was dying, and we put her on a prayer chain. And he said, we put it out. He said, the dog lived and the lady dies. He said, so what about your theory? It's not my theory. It's God's theory. It's a son of God's theory. And so you're attacking the very person you say that believe that. Right. And Angela was there when the guy said it. He said, so I don't know what that means. I don't know what it means, even greater you'll do.
It kind of, and he was a basic Christian church, okay? But it seemed to me like he was angry with God. That's what it seemed like to me. But imagine that, being a pastor and being angry with God, saying, I don't know what the H he's doing. That's like, that was the attitude. It was really weird. But it's weird that he doesn't really know that he believes in miracles. It's like he resisted that God does anything that makes any sense whatsoever, and that that God's not in God of miracle business. He's not in that business. I mean, faith is important. It's like what makes everything happen. But obviously, he wasn't in the place to believe at that time, and so anything good is not necessarily going to happen. You have to believe it for it to begin to happen, and he wasn't in that space. So
yeah.
But there's this thing about God's will too. you know?
So I wanted to get out of there. Angela wanted to get out of these places, you know? So because I wanted to be happy again, I wanted to stop drinking. I don't know why I'm drinking. I don't know why I'm unhappy. I don't know why I'm so angry. I don't know why, all these questions. So when I read this scale, I thought, boy, this sure sounds beautiful. You know, boy, if I could get this. So I started studying, this was some of them, was just a few. I don't know if you see them. And he has also this book of slides, major book.
Really
And
thick. Yeah.
I started just going and going and going. And this one here really helped me. It was called Transcending, Levels of Consciousness, by Dr. David R. Hawkins. Because I wanted to
By the way,
transcend.
that's where
Okay.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, I wanted to transcend the consciousness that I was into. So here I had God energy, right? God, the spirit of God was in and through me, right? That's what I'm talking with now. I wouldn't be talking if God wasn't making my mouth go and that sort of thing.
Beating our heart.
But that I can be contaminated. I can be contaminated with wrong understanding, with spirits, with all sorts of things. And so one of the things I found in Dr. David R. Hawkins' book was that this level of consciousness, where we go from unhealthy to healthy, from 200 to just over 200, was a surrendered state. It was the words, God help me. And I thought that was so powerful. And it was also the willingness to want to be honest and integrity. See, he was an alcoholic himself, and he said the day he got better was the day he said, I'm an alcoholic. Now, don't get me wrong. That's just a disease. That's not really who we are. Who we are at the core is something much greater. That's what Jesus was talking about. But obviously, we're not there yet. I wasn't there yet. And so the question was, like I said again, how do I get there? And so the first thing to say was, I'm not there. I'm not there. I'm angry. See, that's that coming clean. That's coming out of denial.
That's that integrity level at that 200 where
Yeah.
it so shows on the scale here.
Yeah. I'm unhealthy. I'm not whole. I'm not happy. I'm miserable. I was even walking like a hunchback, like this when Angela met me.
Yeah.
I was depressed. I was drinking, doing all sorts of things. And I thought, so I admitted that to myself. I said, I'm miserable. I was even a victim. I couldn't wait to tell people about their religion and what they'd done with me. Although at one point in my life, they might have saved my life. But at another point in my life, it was a means to an end. Religion was a means to an end. That religion was a means to an end. At one point, it served me. At another point, it didn't serve me. It was a means to an end. I enjoyed the camaraderie, the assemblies, the association. But at another point, they didn't believe in miracles. They didn't believe in healing. They didn't believe in anything like that. We had to wait for the new system. We had to wait for the new world to behold. There was nothing in there about healing, although Jesus said, these and greater things you'll do. And so anyway, once I admitted, once I said, I'm sick. I'm sick consciously. At the core, I'm pure. At the core, there's a God energy in all of us. There's a spirit of truth but I had veils. I had these covers over my eyes, and they had to be removed. So I had to say, God, I'm sick.
If anybody wants to say anything, just kind of butt in
Yeah.
at any point. And we can hear you very easily. So.
Yes. So Hawkins had, I started reading his books, and I was trying to find the golden key that could transform me, the golden, the power. Where's the power for Dan to rewrite the forces actuating the mind? Actually, it wasn't me rewriting, it was God rewriting, right? What is the power, the force for God to rewrite the forces actuating the mind, the dysfunction?
In the Christian Bible, it says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. It's in the New Testament.
Yes.
So that's the way the Jehovah's Witnesses say that verse, by the way.
Yeah. And I like the words, what Jesus said. I wanted to believe my body could be healed, and I've had some healings. I've had a couple of very miraculous healings. It's unbelievable. And so I know healing is real. I know God can bring us to homeostasis. I know homeostasis is what makes all things new in us, if we can get to that point where our minds aren't running to show. And so anyway, long story short, I found this in one of Dr. Hawkins' books, he was called. He said that it was kind of like to me, it was like the magic word. He was saying, you know, you need to say, "God help me, God, Heavenly Father, Almighty Father, Lord, capital L, Jehovah, help me. I need help." And he made this distinction that I thought was interesting. If we
Can you
need,
hear me?
yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I've
go
been
ahead,
trying
go
to
ahead. We're good.
As you know, hi, my name's Anita, and I've been on this journey. It is absolutely incredible. I am rough times, good times. Watching you, Dan and Angela, walk through your walk has just been very exciting. But one of the things I'm working on right now, I'm working on a new book, and it's about thoughts and how important our thoughts are. And you were saying, I am an alcoholic. I have a problem with that now that I'm looking at words, because we build our world, our bodies, our lives, one thought at a time. So our words are important, and each step you guys have taken has been so exciting. And now I'm taking it too, and I'm trying to draw a cartoon book explaining how our cells talk to each other. Every word,
Yeah.
every thought is so important. Love is the key. Love is the key. So I'll shut up, but
No, that's a great
anyway,
point.
No, and can I say one thing
Yeah.
too, Mom? Dan and I absolutely do believe that we don't think it's the best thing for people to go in and just say outright, I am an alcoholic, because you're right. It does solidify as if you're saying, I'm forever going to be that. So we believe in saying, I am a recovering, at least at least say I'm a recovering, so that there's that hope at least, but to say I am, that's powerful. Anything I am, whatever comes after that is creating that very same thing. I think it's very, very
Yeah.
serious.
And it was, and like I said, it wasn't who I was at a core. And I'm glad you brought that up, Anita. That
Me
was a good
too. That was a
point.
really good point.
Because yes, Alcoholics Anonymous wants you to say that at every meeting. And that was a great point.
Yes.
You know, I am an alcoholic. I'm Dan and I am an alcoholic. They wanted us to associate with that.
Yes.
So what's interesting was about the group. I'll just tell you a little bit about the group since I was in the group. And I haven't drank in how many years now?
19.
19 years I haven't drank anything and don't desire it. I can buy
Not
it.
quite 19, coming up on.
Yeah, I can pour it. I can buy it. It doesn't faze me. I never want it in my body again. But when I started to go to the groups were like, you know, I'm so and so and I'm an alcoholic. And when I studied the groups, they said people stayed healthy as long as they were in the group, right? As long as they were in the
They
group.
said.
They said there was a conscious level of 600 or something. But what I realized was this. It's kind of like what AJ said. Within the group, you say you're an alcoholic, but what you have in there is you have all this accountability, right?
Yeah.
You have all the people in the group that are waiting to hear, did you make it another day without alcohol? You've got a sponsor, you've got all this. So it's kind of like you're chained to the group, right?
That's
And
right.
every week, I'm an alcoholic and I'm an alcoholic. I'm Dan. Thank you. Welcome, Dan. You know, I'm an alcoholic. Welcome, Tom. I'm an alcoholic. Welcome, Angela. You know, and you went around the group. And I did like Anita said, I said, I'm not an alcoholic. That's not who I am at the core of who I am.
Yeah.
That might be a place or a label that helped me identify a problem that I was in at the moment.
Which was the whole idea of it is that you admit that you're powerless over your addiction, okay? And then you seek a higher power who is able to restore you from your sanity, which they're calling that insanity, living the same way every day and getting the same result, drinking yourself to death. You identify that and you speak to it and you allow power greater than you to restore you to sanity. So that's right. It is to admit the problem, but then you don't want to keep identifying with that, or you will stay in that
Yeah.
hole. And also too, they were relying on each other to keep each other from drinking again, as opposed to really, really relying on that higher power that they talk about right there. They're relying on each other and the telling of their story, because that's what we witnessed. It. It's the same story. They're telling their story, every aspect of it over and over and over again, which you need to do in the beginning, but after a while you need to let go of it and move on. But they kept in that hole and not moving up and out, and relying on the power that they're talking about, or surrendering to in there.
Well, what I'm learning now, I'm dealing with some health issues. And so I'm listening to a variety of teachers that are teaching us how to be healthy. Our bodies were created to be healthy, not sick. Our society has trained us to be sick. And so getting out of that training is hard work. But if you reword things, I am healing. I was an alcoholic. Putting the past behind instead of the I am, which I am healing. I am healthy. I am healed. I'm writing this stuff down every day.
Man, that's exciting.
Wow. Who are some of the teachers you're listening to, and who can you say?
Louise Hayes won, right?
Louise Hay is one. Uh,
Joe
Greg
Dispenza.
Braden is amazing.
Yeah.
Joe's last name? I always forget his last name.
Dispenza. Yeah, Joe Dispenza.
Trey Smith. They all are pitching in little pieces that are coming together in my mind, and I am just so excited.
Oh man,
and that's one of the words I use.
exciting!
I like that.
It's exciting.
I created a journal. It's got little cartoons. You know, I'm a cartoonist, so
Yeah.
it's got little bubbles all over it, so I can remind myself every day.
Ooh, I like that a lot. I love that.
Wow.
Hey, I was going to tell you something. You know, I had a vision of you yesterday. And I keep having it absolutely every single day. But what it is that you and I are on a stage somewhere in a very big audience, and you are dressed with flowy clothes, kind of chiffony, and your hair is, you know, short and cute and sassy. And you're up there proud and showing this brand new book that I knew was a self-help book, but I didn't know what the title of it was. But you were showing this book, and you and I were just powerful up there on that stage. And you were so healthy and so happy and so content.
Wow.
And so having gotten above everything that you've been wanting to rise up above and out, and powerfully now teaching what you had discovered. And here you are telling me you're writing this book that is exactly the kind of
Gonna
book
help
I
a lot
saw
of
in my
people.
vision. So anyway, that's way exciting to me that you are now telling me this. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I got a
Well,
question for Anita too. So my question, Anita, you're heavily into, religion and that sort of thing, and some of these things are sort of new, they call them new age, or really not new age or old age, but how do you transcend the fear of coming out of strict religiosity? I don't know, maybe you weren't in that, but how do you deal with it, coming into this what they call newer understanding? Again, I don't believe it was newer understanding, but was that a challenge for you coming from, limited perspectives and coming into this?
oh, Dan, it's an incredible journey, because what I started seeing first a few years ago was boxes, people in boxes, their
Oh,
beliefs in boxes. And I realized that there's so many people like a prophecy. I've been looking at prophecy and what it is and what it isn't. And I thought it was cast in stone. And what I'm finding out now, listening to a variety of different people, it isn't cast in stone. There are things that are going to happen that were prophesied from years ago that don't have to happen if we change.
Ooh.
Because the prophets, when they were preaching, I mean, look at Nineveh, okay? The prophecy was that Nineveh was going to be destroyed.
Right.
But the people changed. They listened
Yes.
and they
oh,
changed.
Yes.
So we don't know. God says he hears our prayers. If he's hearing our prayers and we change, then guess what? Everything around is going to change too.
Yes.
It doesn't have to stay. I mean, right now I'm battling some health issues. Does it have to stay that way? Do I have to focus on it and say, oh, I have this or I have that? No, I don't. I go to the Father and say, I trust you. I believe you. Bring me the teachers. And oh my goodness, is he bringing me teachers? And they all don't agree, but there's a core that they all do agree on. and that is the 5 books of the Bible. The first 5 books are the only ones that are solid and that they can prove scientifically. There's a series of movies that they did, A Pattern of Evidence. If you haven't seen it, I recommend it, because he, as a filmmaker, went in to prove whether or not the Bible was true or just stories. And so he went looking, talking to archaeologists, scientists, all kinds of people, and he went to the locations, and they have found evidence that you can't refute. And now I'm doing the same thing with the science stuff. Science, I've always poo-pooed. No, they don't know what they're talking about. This is wrong, that's wrong. Well, a lot of it is. A lot of it they make up. But there is real science. One teacher, Brad, do you remember Brad Scott?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Well, Brad said that people are going to be searching and searching to prove there is no God, and they're going to find God. And now, from this new science stuff that they're finding, they have. And Greg Braden says they have found in our DNA God's name and a message to us.
Yeah.
And there's just so much. I'm an old lady, and I'm learning all this stuff, and it's very exciting. There is a program on YouTube called what's her name? Gladys, Dr. Gladys.
Yes.
And she's 103 years old.
Wow.
She was a dear close friend of my cousin, Dr. Jean, and
wow.
they were working together in Scottsdale when Jean died on a clinic. Well, I met Dr. Gladys when I was in Scottsdale for Jean's memorial service. And now listening to her talking about her life, and she's had a hard life. She hasn't had it all handed to her on a silver platter. She's written a book about it, and she's delightful. And she's 103 years old.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
by the way, for anyone listening, that woman that you're talking about, Dr. Jean, what was her last name, Mom?
Chapman, Dr. Chapman.
Dr. Jean Chapman. She was one of the first women doctors, I think, in the United States, right?
She was the first woman medical director of a large corporation.
Wow.
It was, what was the name of the big corporation? I can't think of the name. Yeah, she was the first medical director. And you know what?
And your cousin, right?
Pushed her to do that was that she saw people were making themselves sick with the people we make our own selves sick.
Yeah.
And she started studying that. And so in her being the medical director, she started helping people learn to be well. She taught me a lot. She was my mentor, and I learned a lot from her. So I'll shut up. I'm sorry.
That's incredible.
No,
Get me going. You know me, honey. I don't stop easily.
No, that
That
was
good.
that was good.
And what did you want to say anything more about Dr. Gladys, about the 103-year-old woman?
Oh, well, there's so much about Dr. Gladys. They've got a whole bunch of interviews on YouTube. But she learned about being happy and loving ourselves. She learned and helped teach and put together a clinic, and it's still going now in Scottsdale.
Wow.
To help people with their thoughts and with their health naturally. She doesn't believe that the medical system is doing us any favors.
Is she actually still working, Mom, or is that just her clinic?
The clinic is, I don't think she's still working, although she still rides her bicycle.
Do you have any idea the name of her program or her organization by chance?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
You know the name of her organization or clinic name or that she started that's still going on today in Scottsdale?
You know, it was on, in fact, I was very disappointed on the interviews that they've got a whole bunch of interviews right now because she just released her book, Lived Life. But they just this little quick blurb. Dr. Gladys contacted her, and it was just so short. I couldn't get it done. I can go back and get it. I just, in fact, I did contact them because I wanted her to know how Jean loved her so much.
Is that her first name or her last name, Dr. Gladys?
Dr. Gladys McGarry. But Dr. Gladys is what they call her. So if you go on the YouTube, the titles are 103-year-old woman tells her secrets or something like that. But the 103-year-old woman seems to be the title that catches it on YouTube.
And Arizona
But
is such a great place for all that stuff, you know? It says people are open to change and trying to get out of the box, like you said. Everything's
yeah.
there in Arizona. It's amazing.
Oh yeah,
I like it. I don't want to live there, but I love it.
I know.
Well, trying to put the box, put together a new a belief system, people have to be really careful that they don't make another box,
Right.
because it's
Right.
real easy to do, to pick, oh, I believe that, and I believe that, and I believe that, and then you put it all together, but then there's maybe that and that and that. Did you miss so
I know,
far?
I know, it's
Yeah, that's
crazy.
so interesting too, what you said too about all the boxes. I remember when I came out of the Jehovah's Witnesses, you know, and it was funny when I looked out, I saw the boxes. I saw the people saying, "Oh, I'm a fundamentalist Christian. I'm a yeah, I'm this limitation. I believe these 5 things, you know." Um, and it was like, no, no, no.
I know.
Like you said, yeah, they just created another pen to go in, another pasture to worship under, and another limited personality.
You have
And
somebody to tell them what to do, so they'll feel safe, you know?
yeah, and we know the
Well,
source, God, is unlimited, so here we go into this, these places, but they're just more of the same. Go ahead.
well, so Dan, it's like when you first got out of your religion, you jumped into another box. You
Yeah.
jumped into a very angry box, and
Yes.
you had to grow out of that one. But it's amazing how you pick up something from each box. So what is it? Romans 8:28, it says all things work together for good to those who love God and are called according to his purpose. If you're being called, and I know you are, but anybody being called and God's working with them, he may let them go through a whole bunch of muddy boxes,
Oh,
to
yeah.
get the information that he wants them to have.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna say about Dan going into a box that was angry. Actually, he went into another box, but he was angry about the witnesses trying to get over that anger in that next box. But and that, which is a very, very helpful place. But he was still very angry, and I think he's just now starting to not be angry. Just maybe the last 6 months, really releasing that anger, and still not 100% over it either.
Yeah,
Doctor,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, Dr. Gladys was laughing when one of her interviews, she was 83 when she learned this really great lesson. and so it's not like you stop learning when you're 60 or 70.
Never.
She's still learning, and she's 103. She said, I'm still learning.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
We'll never stop learning till the
No.
day we die.
I was going to tell you, me and Angela were trying to talk about on the radio show. We've been trying to talk about the guilt, around sex and different things, and trying to do it tactfully and stuff, because the religions have had us under such shame. And so me and Angela would bring it up every now and then on the 6 screens about, I'd always tell my story about going to the elders and saying I masturbated and stuff, and how they disciplined me really harshly and told me there was something wrong with me and told me I was a freak, and you know what I mean. And I believed I was a freak, because when a man 70 years old looks at you and says, you're broken, you feel you're broken. He just put
You must be telling the
that
truth.
spell on me. He's the elder. He's never had this problem. It was only me. And so because I believed it, I started to get very sick. I started to get ulcers. I started to get bodily problems. I was in dis-ease this whole time. So me and Angela I started sharing pretty openly about this. I shared on 3ABN, 3 Angel Broadcasting Network, with the Seventh-day Adventist. And we put it out there. They didn't want to play the show. They said it was too graphic. It was too this, too that. And we drove all the way to Illinois or Indiana, wherever their broadcasting network is. And we
For
said,
them to
wow.
film that. Yeah.
And they said, we don't know what to do with it. And so they ended up playing it. They put a PG-13 on it. And it was the #1 watched presentation celebrating life and recovery that they ever had.
It's called Am I Too Crazy for God?
Yeah. And it was
But-
because somebody was willing to come forward. And I told those elders, when are you elders going to get real? When are you going to actually be able to talk to a young man about this, as opposed to being guilt ridden? So we talked about this. We talked about it on the 6 screens, and it was very, very shy. Well, last night, some people did a show on it. and it was huge.
Oh, man, it was
It was
incredible.
incredible, and they
Ugh.
were very open, and, you men, you've gotta learn about your wives and her body and this, and it was so deep, and I was like, "Oh my god, it's out there so people can hear, even if they didn't wanna come on the show." It was like, "Let's talk about it." There was a man, his name was, Dr. Gilbert, Dr. Robert Gilbert, and, he's with the Vessig Institute. And he was talking about older men leaky sexual desire, and I was like, whoa, that's kind of weird. Well, some guy asked him about it. Now this guy's like an intellectual, he's spiritual, and he says, yeah, this kid asked him, there's some symptom called leaky sexual desire, old man desire or something,
Yeah, something like that.
and I was like, whoa. and i
What is
thought
that?
and I thought, man, is Dr. Gilbert going to address that? And Dr. Gilbert says, oh, absolutely. That's a tremendous problem today. Older people acting out. And I'd like to really talk about that. And what he basically said was that we were not allowed to allow this part of ourself that needed to come forth, that needed to emerge. It's been suppressed, it's been pushed down. We've been told we're bad, don't talk about it, hide it, hide it, hide it. So it's suppressed.
Like
And
priests, for example, who are, celibate and took the vow of chastity and all
yes,
of that, and they're suppressed for so long, and it comes
and it
out.
comes out, little boys, perversions, different things. But he he said, I just wish everyone would have their little prodigal journey. But what he said most importantly were that all of these were energies that God put in our Bible: become fruitful, become many, fill the earth, and they were supposed to come forth, and then they were supposed to be sorted out. And he said, so most of us never sorted that out. We were just told to hide it, suppress it, move it back, you're bad. And so he wasn't saying it's a free for all either. But what was interesting was I watched a clip, and it was Lady Gaga, and it was the Dalai Lama, and they were showing the Dalai Lama, and the people were saying, "Watch the Dalai Lama, how he's acting around Lady Gaga." And Lady Gaga had these pants that had big
Those
holes in them,
holes, yeah.
and the Pope, or not the Pope, the Dalai Lama kept reaching over and touching her raw leg, and she would go like this.
What are you
And
doing?
she's looking around like, are there hidden cameras? Is this like a joke? And he starts smelling her. He started getting real close to her, and you could see him, smelling her, and she was very uncomfortable. And I thought about what Dr. Robert Gilbert said about leaky,
Sexual
old men, sexual, whatever.
desire or something.
And I couldn't believe he answered it. He said, but that's why you find these gurus and different things that have said they were going to be chaste and all this, and they've suppressed it. So when the guru girl comes along, all of a sudden she's attacked, or she's, the guy wants to have sex, or he's flirting, and the people are like, how could this be? The guy seems gifted. The guy seems like he has some spirituality, and how could he be this other thing at the same time? And he says it was because it never had the opportunity to put it in the light of good reason and be sorted out and be alchemized and be settled. And so I felt like, go ahead.
So it comes out as the old leaky, it's the leaky thing that, you thought your container was solid and you're a good solid person who's developed yourself and all that, but then all of a sudden this little leak comes out that was never, it's been pushed aside and shoved down underneath, and it has to come out, and that's the leak. It finally starts leaking out. And Dr. Robert Gilbert said that yes, these are good, solid human beings that are very spiritually, progressed in their life, but this one problem is still not been dealt with, and it just comes leaking out and just cannot be hidden. It just
Right.
comes out, and they're still spiritual people, and God has truly worked with them, but it's just something that has got to be dealt with, and it just comes sneaking out.
In weird ways, porn and all these different ways you start hiding. And so, me in my religion, I couldn't even hold a girl's hand. Yeah, and I'm going to tell you what I learned from the show last night, but I couldn't even hold a girl's hand. I kissed a girl one time. Yeah, a little kiss. And my dad came down the road, literally 60 miles an hour down a gravel road, and slid up to my bumper, grabbed me by the ear, and pulled me in the car. And, so that's a
Saw you kissing her.
worldly woman. And how dare you? And spud down the road. And I was terrified, but he pushed that down in me. And then he bragged about the girls he had in Vietnam. And he bragged about other things that he did. And I thought, what a hypocrite. But that causes damage. And so last night, it was very interesting, but this guy brought out about the Bible, that the Bible, a lot of it was written by these men, these authoritarian men, and this is how it's going to be, and this is how it's going to
Which
be.
part of the Bible? My mother would take issue with.
Well, I'm just saying, yeah, I'm just saying in general, it's, you know, you just say the New Testament. A lot of it was male. But anyway, what was interesting was, just think about this. I was told as a Jehovah's Witness, this is what we were told. If your eye's making you stumble, tear it out. You know, people have tried to do that in the Jehovah's Witnesses. They've said, I've looked at the girl more than twice. You've already done it. You've committed it in your heart. Tear your eyes out. There's actually been people tried to rip their
Yeah,
eyes out of their
for
head and put in a mental ward. And then the other one is
Wow.
this, and this is a gross one. This is a gross one. Now think about how insane this is. Now some man wrote this in the Bible, and I don't agree with it at all. But it says if you're past the bloom of youth and you cannot get in control of your vessel, it says let him marry than to keep sinning.
Better for him to marry
No,
than to
don't
keep
get to
sinning.
know the girl. Don't get to see if this is a girl I'm compatible with. Don't hold her hand. Don't do anything.
Not allowed to kiss, not allowed to hold hands, not allowed to.
But marry her so you can screw your brains out.
Right.
I mean, that's what it says.
That
That's what
is.
that scripture says. If you can't get control of your vessel, then it's better
Better
to
to-
remarry. Go screw your wife
go
to death. And that's what she's for. Go marry. Now, my uncle affirmed that, because when I was down in Georgia, my uncle was pretty high up in the Jehovah's Witnesses, his Bethelite daughters, and he was on every commission, everything. And he told me, he said, Dan, you know, he says, he grabbed my hand. I had a girlfriend that wanted to be with me at a funeral, and I went down for the
But
funeral.
she was not Jehovah's Witness.
She wasn't Jehovah's Witness, and he saw we were kind of attracted, and she was an old girlfriend, and she wanted to go to the funeral. Well, my uncle saw me, and he reached over and he smiled at me, and he put out his hand for me to shake my hand. And I said, oh, you know, and I went to shake his hand, and he started to crush my hand. My uncle had a real tight grip because he was a mechanic. And he literally crushed my hand. He could have broke it. And he squeezed it. And then he looked me in the eye with this dead looking eye grip. And he says, you know, Dan, I can crush your hand, but Jehovah can kill you. Throw her to the dogs.
And then he tried to get Dan to marry this crazy girl.
Yeah, and then we went down there and he said, I got a girl that'd be great for you. She's a fine sister.
JW.
Well, I looked out there and I said, I don't see no girl. There's just some guy underneath the hood of the car. And he goes, that's her. And there's some girl hanging there. She looked like a man, you know, and she's got grease all over and she's hanging upside down and she's southern. And I'm like, no.
Not pretty. Not pretty.
Well, my uncle, I said, no, Neil, I can't do that. And he said, Dan, let me tell you something. And I said, yeah. He goes, they all got the same damn movable parts.
Just pick one.
Just pick one. And so I did. That was my second wife. I just
Not
picked
that
one.
he didn't marry that woman, but he did pick one.
Yeah,
Just
I
pick
did.
one.
I did. I had two girls, and I said, whoever meets me at the bus stop, I'm going to marry. And so I was headed back to Texas, and I hit Louisiana, and it was a long story short. I won't go into it. But the girl overheard another girl that saying she was going to pick me up.
Your
Roma was
roommates.
going to pick me up in Denver, but Angelia decided she was going to go to
The previous bus
the
stop.
previous bus stop in Louisiana and picked me up. And so she did. And I said, well, that's who I'm marrying, because they have the same movable parts. And if you're beyond the bloom of youth, just marry one. I didn't really know her. I didn't get to know her. I had no idea, but it was taking that literal word. See, I didn't have tools. I didn't know how to treat a woman. I didn't know about their anatomy, about their makeup, about their sexual nature. I knew nothing. I had nothing. If your eye's making you stumble, pull it out. You know, if you're unclean, go outside the city and remain for a month. You know, I mean, it was like I had all of this weird programming. And so anyway, last night, because of our willingness to come out and talk, me and Angela have been talking and talking and talking. We'll bring it up every now and then, the shame that I was in, the ulcers that I have, and the things that I had because of this guilt that I lived in. A house divided against itself. Can you imagine? You know, the desire for sex can be like a desire for food. You know, it reoccurs of its own, and it's, you know, it's because God said, become fruitful and become many and fill the earth. So he put it in me. But yes, it has to be what do you call it, tempered. And but I wasn't taught any of that. It was black and white. It was good and evil, and it was part of you know, Satan. It was part of being spirit demonic, you know. And so this Dr. Gilbert talked about it. He said, when you take sexual stuff and make it demonic and, make it part of Satan, he said, now that's why people, they had these, the seances and the children killing and all this weird stuff. He said that nobody would go to if they were allowed to explore and move about and allow this thing to come forth and work these things out. But it was just kind of beautiful. Last night, the show went on from 7:30 to 3 in the morning. She said
Wow.
3 in the morning.
Wow. People are
And
hungry to talk about this.
They were lined up. They
They
couldn't
talk
stop
about
talking
oral
about it.
sex, anal sex,
Everything.
every kind of thing you can imagine known to mankind that no one has ever talked about
Yeah, because one
before.
lady says, well, when you get older, you can't get in certain positions because of your hips and because of your this. So does this make this wrong?
Based on the position of the Watchtower
Yeah,
organization, what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do, they're saying we can't do these choices. They're not available to us. So now what? Why can't we do the oral sex? Or, they had all these questions. They just went on and on. It was great.
yeah, something that's taboo, something that everybody deals with, somebody that everybody, and I said this, I said, I have to feel this, and Rick Fearon was saying the same thing. There has to be something behind that kind of guilt and shame. And I've been learning that shame and guilt is a form of control. And so in that sense, I was being controlled. Well, what can I do to overcome? Well, just keep coming to meetings, try to go out door to door more, maybe do some pioneering, try to do this. It was never explained to me that this was something that was partly natural and the thing that Dr. Gilbert said. And so all of this was brought out last night for the first time in a very big way on a radio show. You know which one it is, Anita. Back East, Rick Fearon's
Six Screens of the
Six Screens
Watchtower.
of the
By the way,
Watchtower.
it was the February 10th, 2024 episode put together by Connie and Dick Borghi, or
Yeah,
Rich Borghi. And
done very
I don't know the
tasteful.
name of it, but it was all about this sex issues
And everybody wanted to talk. Everyone
for
wanted to say,
hours
can
and
I say
hours.
this? Another guy said this, that he was told, again, this is a guy from Europe. He says, I was told that if I have sex with my wife, I'm raping her.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so he said he would be in the bedroom, doing his thing, foreplaying, but he couldn't get past that. And he got divorced because his mother, Jehovah's Witness, said that's a form of rape because she felt like she was raped because there wasn't love in there. There wasn't this. And the guy just got off. And anyway, it was this open discussion. And I thought, my God, please, thank you, Lord, for
Thank you.
setting some people free. Why can't we talk about this thing? Why is it so taboo? Why? And so
It
last
binds
night,
people up.
it binds
Definitely.
people up, and then they have to live in secret. Then they have to live in hiding. Then
That
they
just
have to,
causes more of the same problem.
yeah, like to celebrate recovery. Me and
Oh,
Angela went
good
over there one
point.
time. The celebrate recovery was bigger than the church.
The Christian 12
It
step
was
is
a
what this
Christian
is.
12 steps, celebrating life and recovery. It was bigger than the church. And all the men were sexually addicted, or they were told they were sexually addicted. And it was sad. And they were all acting out. They were all hiding. They were in porn shops. Had girlfriends. And it was like, oh my
And
God.
what was even worse is that somehow by telling it to a group that has to make promises that they will never tell anyone outside of this group, then it made them feel safe to tell the story out loud and get it off their chest and then continue doing it. So it wasn't really getting the job done, what they were there to do, because it was just a place to dump and then go back and continue doing the same thing. And it was supposed to be an accountability partner to overcome, but it wasn't working. And I don't know. Anyway, that was interesting.
Yes. You want to say something, Anita?
No, that's
So,
I could.
yeah. So we'll just end it. But maybe next time, let's talk about some of the things that we've had to transcend. I think we've been on here about an hour, but I was going to
Yes.
say I love this book, Transcending Levels of Consciousness. Basically, it was Dr. David R. Hawkins, and he talked about all these levels of consciousness. He has a discussion, like AJ says, from a scientific point of view and a spiritual point of view. But he talks about all the things. He starts off from the very bottom of the scale: shame, despair, guilt, hate, grief, fear, and he moves up and he talks about it, and he has a discussion, and then he has a little thing about how to transcend it. Yeah,
Love
and
it.
it's in the discussion about it that it's actually being transcended because they light on it. But anyway, it goes into courage, willingness, acceptance, getting up into 2, 3, 400s, and then how life gets better. We feel lighter, we feel more healthy, we feel more whole, our body starts to heal, our mind starts to heal, we get homeostasis, we get peace, veils are removed, we get clear sight, we have love for people, we have understanding. These are all energy fields. And so he takes us from that all the way up to the highest part of the scale. So that book takes you from here all the way up into
Wow, I
discussion.
didn't know that.
And
That's
so
cool.
you can look at it. This isn't meant to judge anybody. We're all been in all these. I've lived here most of my life down here. I live down here, and I've been very sick down here.
Oh, I
And
see. So the first section of the book is the calibration up from 0 down up to 200. So then finally above that, you're beyond the ego and you're into the section 2 of the book, which goes from 200 to 499.
499.
That it has courage, neutrality, willingness, acceptance, and reason. And then section 3 goes from 500 to 999, which is into the love.
See,
Really
that's
getting
where
some
it
deep
sounds
stuff.
like you're at, AJ, is in the love frequency, and that's when your whole body heals.
Yeah.
Because he talks about love, and he talks about love is not of this world.
Mm.
That it's Jesus said you'll know them by their fruit. I like that. And anyway, love is a frequency. It wasn't natural for me to love. It wasn't natural for me to forgive. And so, but that lovingness he talks about is where we move into healing and then unconditional love. And then he talks about even loving the unlovable, which is like your sainthood. Like the saints can love the unlovable. And so I know I wasn't there. I'm probably still not there, but that is a wonderful goal to go to want to be lovingness. God is love. And
And
Well,
now I see, go ahead, AJ.
from what I'm learning, and I know that I'm repeating somebody that you probably already know about and everything, and it's nothing new, but it's a foreign subject for me, and that is the first thing we must do is learn to love ourselves.
Oh,
And I when I first heard that video, I was listening to an audio tape in my car. I'll never forget where I was because I was on my way to work. I worked at Casa Bonita at that point as a caricature artist, and I was crossing Colfax. I remember exactly when the audio tape in my car, she said, "You must learn to love yourself." And I started crying and yelling at the radio in my car saying, "How can I love myself when I've made so many mistakes?" And I cried and cried, and that's been a long journey for me to start believing that, because to me, as a little girl, growing up in a church, an old-fashioned kind of offshoot of the Mennonites, it doesn't matter what church it is because most of them taught that we were worthless, and we had to realize how sinful we were and that we were worthless. And so I grew up believing I was worthless. And so to look at somebody saying you have to learn to love yourself. I mean, Louise Hay wants you to look in the mirror and look in your eyes and say, "I love you," and really mean it. And it's not the kind of love where you put yourself in front of everybody else. It's a respect. It's a compassion. It's a understanding. It's not the word love, like that word love. One of the things I wrote was, love is just a 4-letter word without time. And you can say "I love you" all you want, people, whether it's your children or your lover. It doesn't matter who it is. If you don't give them the time that they need, if you don't really show the love, then it's just a 4-letter word. I have somebody say to me, "I love you, I love you, I love you," and then they don't even bother with me. That's hard to take. I feel then I started realizing I was dealing with self-pity because, oh, look at this, they didn't call me, and oh my goodness, the battles I'm battling is just exciting as all get out, and I'm getting better, and I can see it, and I can see the lessons that I'm being shown, if I can figure out how to get this book on paper and show how each cell communicates, because you take one cell and you start filling it with love. All it takes is one, and then you go to another, and then you have the opportunity to be mad and say something nasty about somebody. No, look, they've got a place. It's exciting. I don't know how else. I'm
Yes.
learning every day. I have good days, I have bad days, but I'm really grateful for this journey that the Father has allowed me to be on.
That's so
Yeah,
cool.
that's awesome.
I always feel like, when you write a book, it's a catharsis, they say. I never even knew what that word meant, but when Dan wrote his first book, Eyewitness, anyway, that was a healing time for him. He cried a
Mhm.
lot. He had bad nightmares. He sweat like practically blood because it was so hard to go through the writing of it. And it took me a long time to get my first book done too, just because it's so real and raw writing it. But they say that's some of the best books. And
Yeah.
even though you're kind of learning as you're going and as you're writing, you're letting go of things and processing still. And anyway, this one lady said she wrote a book like that. And then the second book, so first one, she wrote it learning and then in saying what she was learning, but it was powerful. And then her next book, she put it all into its place and really let go and really been able to process and use it and live it. And then she writes the second one. Oh, powerful book, that one, second one. Anyway, it's kind of cool that, we just keep on progressing and our books get different and
That's right.
Yeah. Well, we're different. Yeah.
yeah, we're
Mhm.
different. Yeah. So anyway,
It's like you said too, Anita, you're not the same person. And you said something, I forgot what you were going to say, but I like that point you just made about, how transcending the people who can't love you back. And I've had to realize that the people that haven't loved me back haven't had the love to give. It's like you said, for years we didn't love ourselves. So how could
Yeah.
we love anybody? And so
I'm still learning that one.
yeah, me too. And so, we look back at these people, we do it with our families here, don't we?
yeah.
It's the same thing. We're like, why can't they love us back? Why can't they? But they don't have it. Yeah, Ireland's going through that. She's like, how come nobody's happy for me? I'm getting married. How come nobody said congratulations? We were at a going away party
Setting
for her
up a
last night
party.
and at a little Thai restaurant, and all the relatives were there, and she came home feeling bad. She says, nobody wished me well. Nobody's happy for me. Why? How come nobody says congratulations? And and I felt for her, but the truth of it is they didn't have it to give. Honestly, they were miserable themselves. Most of them are very miserable. They're unhappy with their life. They're not doing the work. They won't pick up a book. They won't take a look at themselves. And so what do you expect? You can't expect anything from them,
Yeah,
And
even she said to her mom, so her mom went to there was another party going on after that dinner that I didn't go to. But anyway, after they were all done, her mother drove her home and it was like 3 in the morning. And she was saying to her daughter, you know, how can I be a better mother? And so she kind of goes through all the good things that she's been and you apologize and blah, blah, blah. It's all good. She says, but one thing you could do is just learn to be happy for me that like I'm getting married. I don't understand why you're not happy for me. Why aren't you happy for me? And she says, I don't know. So in other words, yep, you're right. I'm not happy for you. But her mother doesn't really quite have it to give because she doesn't have the joy in her own life and doesn't feel proud of her own life and doesn't have things worked out. And she just, I don't know, she's just not happy for her. Maybe she
Well,
wishes.
unfortunately, Angela, marriage doesn't always bring happiness, and I think people are afraid to be happy for somebody who's getting married because they don't know what's ahead for them, and they really don't have the confidence that it's a really happy marriage, and maybe they don't know how to be happy because they don't know how to support something they may not believe in. I don't know who she's
Yeah,
marrying.
that's true. No, she's not. She's not. She's single. And so,
No, the girl, Ireland, getting married.
oh,
If her mother can't be happy for her, maybe it's because she doesn't trust in the marriage.
oh, right,
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 right.
right.
Which
So anyway,
is, when I just want to say something along that, which is an energy like we can put into the rice, because I like I don't know how much you like the prodigal son story, but I like it because the prodigal son story realized that the young boy had to go out and live his life and do his thing. He didn't run after him. He didn't try to fix him, and he loved him. While he was going away, he gave him his inheritance, and he basically said, God bless you on your journey. So I've kind of come to that point because, yeah, I've lived a while. I'm in my 60s, and yeah, I know more than I did when I was 20, and I might think that might be a bad choice or a good choice, whatever. But I've learned that it's really none of my business at a certain point. I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to hold the intention that
That's right.
because
Right.
relationships, they're going to learn one way or another, they're going to learn from it. It's going to be, say
Right.
relationships are your highest learning when me and Angela, we've had so much learning together and bouncing things off and tensions and, different things. But why can't, and I had to get into that. So I understand where her mother is because I've been there. But one thing me and Angela said is we got to stop being like the parent now. We got to like let our daughter grow and let her grow up and wish her well and hope her well and just say she's going to get everything she needs out of that relationship because that's where it ended up
Good and bad.
and good and bad. And she's going to learn from it and she's going to be more, she's going to learn. She'll maybe get some scars, some bruises, but she's going to get exactly what she needs. And that's where I can go into, you know, God bless you on your journey, my
Yeah,
daughter.
one
Mhm.
thing, when I got out of the last relationship that I was in, 24 years marriage, this story kept being brought back to me, and it was about this guy, the baker in the Muppet movie, not the Muppet Show, but the movie. There's a baker in there, and people think he's really wise, and he really was. And one of the things that they asked him was that he said, in relationships, you just their life is full of meetings and partings. And so like, okay, life is full of meetings and partings. So they come and they go. And then his gesture was that you bless each and every one for what it was. You take the good, and you just hold that near and dear, and you gladly and ever so gently move on. Instead of that, you regret, why did that fail? And all this failure, why didn't we make? It's like, no, because I remember one of the things I felt like God was trying to tell me when I left my ex was he said that no, because when I was complaining one day, he goes, no, it's not going to be a lesser, it's just going to be different. Will you accept different? And I'm just trying to help me. Oh yeah. And then I was being told to basically that this is just chalk it up to weirdness. Don't take in your body the guilt and the shame of the failure of the marriage. Just simply chalk it up to, well, that was really weird how that all ended and everything that happened there. Wow. It's just like a soap opera is what I was being kind of shown to realize. Look at it like that was a weird experience. Like bless that relationship for what it was and all the good I got out of it, which was a lot. And then just put like the water off a duck's back, right? It's like that was weird that how that all went down in the end and that whole experience there. But don't like take in the guilt. So I didn't. I couldn't believe it. That really helped me so much. I feel like that was directly God telling me don't take all that in because everybody wants to have guilt about their relationship and oh it's my fault and if I would have just this that and the other thing and but it's like man I learned a lot in that relationship, so many wonderful things, and I did so many wonderful things. And so I just say, well, that ended kind of weird and oh well, and so I just love that Muppet idea is that just bless every relationship for what it's been and the lessons, good or bad, that we learn because we're a different person.
We learn and we thank God for what
Yeah,
we're learning. Yes. Hey,
yeah,
listen, I need to go
yeah, we
too,
gotta
guys.
go too. All right, so
All right. Well,
we love
thank you
you.
for
Being
joining
on.
us. And we look forward to you next week because while you're learning these things, while they're fresh, see it just reactivates, where we've come from and all this stuff. So thanks for sharing,
Yes,
Anita.
thanks for joining us.
Thank you,
We
everybody.
do appreciate it.
Take
Thanks,
care.
everyone. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be on next week, 10 o'clock every Sunday morning. All right, over and out.
For now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.